Today we're talking about how you can take a trip with your pup.
So those of you who are on video can see that we have a guest today. We have Jessica Williams, who is the author of the award-winning Dachshund educational blog, You Did What With Your Wiener.com? I'm not sure if that's the right emphasis or not, but that's how I read it. And she's been traveling, hiking, and camping with her dogs for over 20 years. She's taken her dogs on many extended road trips, covering up to 5,000 miles, and she's flown with them many times. Her biggest dog-focused travel aspirations are living in Switzerland for a month to hike in the Alps and spending a year road tripping around the U.S. with her dogs to hike and camp. I am very happy that you're here to talk to us today, Jessica, all about traveling with pets, because when we were having this, Kim and I were having a discussion recently about her trip to Whidbey Island, and she was saying how it was such a pet-friendly destination, and just made me think there's so many people that do travel with their pets. But there's some things that you need to know beforehand, because I know every time, even I'm in an airport and see all the dogs, I'm like, what did they have to do to bring their dog? What are the rules and all of that? So maybe we can just start off by tell us about your dogs. How long have you told us you've been traveling for 20 years, but maybe what got you started traveling with the dogs?
Yeah. Well, of course, dogs don't live 20 years. Most don't. So it all started with a dachshund named Chester. And this was before I even had my blog and everything. He was actually my roommate's dog, and she had to go out of town for work. And I said I would take care of him. But I was always like on weekends going to visit family and friends all over the state. And so, of course, I couldn't leave him home. So he became my travel buddy. So that's how it really all started. He was my first dog as an adult. When he was about 8, I adopted a second dachshund, and we took her hiking the following day after we adopted her, just to see if it was going to work out. It was either going to work out or not. And she loved it. And that's when I decided to start my blog. She's still around. She's turning 15 in a couple days. Her name is Gretel.
Aw.
They're all miniature dachshunds. Then my middle child is Summit, and she is a female miniature dachshund. She's about 6. And last year, 2023, I got a puppy, but he's 15 months now, so a year and a half about. And
What's his name?
His name's Otter.
Okay.
He's just,
Cute.
he turned old enough to start hiking when winter started. So he's still like a hiker in training. The longest hike he's done is 5 miles. But
That's a lot for those little legs.
well, that's what everyone
Yeah.
says, but you'd be surprised. They're actually bred for hunting and traveling through the woods and covering a lot of ground, and those little legs move fast.
It does make sense that they were like created to get under and down and
Yeah.
stuff, right? Yeah. Great. And I also do want to specify to everyone who's listening, this is going to be an emphasis on traveling with dogs, even though we're saying traveling with pets. So at the end, maybe Tamara will give a few things about, since she's the cat owner in the family, we used to have cats, but right now we're going to be focusing on dogs. And I think one of the first questions, like Tamara emphasized, I have always wondered, we have a Labradoodle. She's 40 pounds, so she cannot fit in a cute little carrier. And we have no interest in putting her in a cargo bay. But what is the logistics if you do want to fly with your dog? What do listeners need to know about that whole process?
Yeah, so I'm going to give you general requirements because each airline has specific requirements. So when you book, even before you book your flight, you want to look at the airline, like on Delta, Southwest, Spirit Airlines, something like that. And if you're going to bring your dog, research their pet policy first before you buy your ticket.
Makes sense.
Most airlines have the option to either fly your dog in cargo or in cabin. I won't go anywhere unless they can go in cabin, but I have small dogs. To be in cabin, you don't have to buy them a separate ticket. They count as your luggage that goes underneath the seat, like your carry-on. But you do have to call ahead to the airline and let them know you're bringing your pet, because it's most limit, say 3 to 4 in the cabin for each flight. And so you want to make sure your pet's kind of on the list. And then the carrier, there's always a carrier dimension limit. There is usually always a weight limit. It's generally 20 to 25 pounds. That includes the carrier and your dog. I did learn actually this morning that Spirit Airlines has a weight limit of 40 pounds. But with that being said, unless your dog is a service dog, and we're not talking about emotional support dog, actual service dog, they must be in a carrier under the seat. You must have a really compact, muscular, small dog that will fit on the seat that would weigh 40 pounds. So but they must go under the seat in the carrier, and it's 1 dog per carrier, 1 dog per person. So I have multiple dogs. I don't fly.
Yeah.
Sometimes I do fly with them, but I only if I'm taking one. So otherwise we drive. I've driven across country because I wanted to take 3 dogs and I couldn't fly with them because even with my husband, that's 2. We have a 3rd dog.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and do you have any I have a lot of notes. Do you have specific questions? I can just give you my quick, like, people must know highlights that are details beyond that, I guess.
I think that's pretty good. Are there normally extra fees that I
You
know
do
it
have to
varies by
pay,
airlines, but
so
typically
you
there's
don't
a
reserve them an extra seat, but you have to pay a pet fee, and it's typically somewhere around $150 each way. So you're talking $300
Oh, wow.
extra for your dog.
I think just the questions I always have in my head are there are certain destinations that I go to that when I'm boarding the plane, I look around, I'm like, that's a lot of dogs. So about the limits. And then whether or not they do need to stay in the carrier, because I'm not sure that's always
So
followed if they
according to
follow
the
some of those
FAA,
tips.
who regulates flights, they must stay in the carrier and it must stay zipped the whole entire time. And it doesn't mean the carrier, as with your personal carry-on, it has to be under the seat for takeoff and landing, but you
Hmm.
can pull the carrier out, so maybe your dog can see you through the window better.
Sure.
Now, different airlines and I'm not trying to throw any airline under the bus and get them in trouble, but, when you're on the plane, some bend the rules a little. I've heard everything from some airlines have known that someone took a dog out of their lap or out of the bag and put it on their lap, which is technically not allowed, but they just looked the other way. They
Mhm.
didn't say anything.
Yeah.
I have been on a flight where I just unzipped the carrier to stick my hand in there to feel how hot it was and to give my dog a little bit of reassurance, and I got in trouble for that because it had to stay zipped.
Wow.
So some are very strict by the book and some are very lenient, and you might even get other passengers and the airline staff oohing and awing over your dog. Um, so that can vary. One thing I do wanna mention, because most people you're gonna read articles on the internet if you're doing research, listen to podcasts, what most people don't mention is that when you come on the plane, let's say you're not checking a bag, so you have your carry-on bag and you have your personal item, your dog is your personal item. So usually you might bring a backpack that has your headphones and your book and things like that, and you'd put it under your seat. You can't do that. It's gotta go You can only bring the pet and your backpack, and it's gotta go up top in the compartment. So, there's 2 tricks. One is get a carrier that has side pockets. So you can't put a lot in there, but you can put your phone in there, you can put your headphones in there, you can put your dog water dish in there, a couple treats and snackies kinda thing. But also, and this is probably breaking the rules, but if you have on a vest or a jacket, you can wear that while you're sitting down and it's got pockets.
Right.
So you can put things in
Yeah.
there too, your reading glasses and your granola bar you're gonna eat later and stuff. Um, so that's
Nice.
the trick, to be able to carry something else with you in your seat besides just the pet. And then also, each airline has carrier dimensions, but each seat does not accommodate that carrier size.
That's what I was
Aisle seats are the
that's what I was gonna
worst.
bring up.
They're the smallest. They're
Yes,
like
because 'cause they've got that
half to
especially in
three-quarter the
Alaska.
size of the other
Yeah,
spaces. Middle seat's ideal. That's the largest space on
yeah.
any plane. Window is your second option, but it's still, because of the curvature of the side of the airplane, is a little trickier. Middle's your best option for checking
Yeah, I
in
find
I
that
was gonna mention that because I know Alaska, especially the aisle seats have the
even with just a personal item, I worry about what my personal item is going to be because technically it's sized for that. But if it has that charging area or
Mhm,
something that
mhm.
bumps out, it annoys me that they take that little bit of space away
I
from
know.
us, right?
I appreciate charging capabilities, but yeah, I wish they'd come up with something
Yeah.
better.
Yeah.
Yeah, so one other thing I always wonder about when I'm walking through the airport, I'll see the dogs out of the carriers on the leashes. I know a lot of airports now have the pet relief areas, but do you have tips for owners that are maybe faced with like delays or, just
Oh, do
dealing with
I?
getting through the
Whew.
airport, getting through security? What is
I flew the
that
last
like?
time I flew with my dog, I flew to a trade show in Las Vegas. And when I went to fly back, there was a storm and delays, and then with the flight crew and all the things, I was stuck in the airport with my dog. I was sick also for 8 hours in the airport. Luckily, we weren't too far from a potty station, but we had to make a lot of trips back and forth. And potty stations are nice, but a lot of dogs aren't going to go in the potty station because it's weird. It's
Mhm.
indoors. It usually is used frequently, so it smells very strongly of urine. And who wants to go there? The dogs, oh, no thanks, when they walk in the door. Um, some will, especially if they've traveled more often, but first time, be prepared that your dog's not going to want to go. And they can actually hold it for a really long time, but usually 10, 12, 15 hours is not, they're not going to be able to hold it that long. In the airports, I think technically they are still supposed to be in the carriers, but I find that to be really lax, partially because airline personnel, they're just there to earn.
Nobody's
They're just
working.
working. Yeah, they don't care if you have your dog
Yeah,
out.
they're
But also
yeah.
service dogs are allowed to be out and they're not required to wear a vest or anything. And so they just don't want to bother like to go up to people, and it's uncomfortable to be like, is your dog a service dog? So they just maybe make assumptions and shrug it off.
Mhm.
Personally, I take my dog out of the carrier. It depends on where I'm in the airport. Like if we're waiting at the gate, I'll take her out of the carrier and maybe do some tricks with her and things, tire her brain out and stimulate her before we get on the plane. So maybe she's more likely to sleep. And I've never had a problem. No one's ever stopped me and told me in the airport to put her back in the crate or anything.
And they have to walk with you through the security check, right?
You have to carry. I have small,
Carry.
so I
Yeah.
have to carry my dog. You take him out
Okay.
of the carrier. The carrier goes through the X-ray machine, and you go through. They usually let you go through like the metal detector, not the one where you got to put your arms up and yeah, because you got to
Do
hold
that
the
with a
dog.
wiener
That's-
dog.
I have
They'll
though
hold the dog
before.
up. A
Yeah,
Lion
then
King
you
moment.
yeah, then you come through and you put him back in the carrier. With a larger dog, I assume they do walk through with you. Yeah,
That's interesting though, because you think usually they're wearing a collar and you have a leash, but
gonna
it's
take it
not.
off. Yeah,
So
Yeah,
hopefully you don't have one
interesting.
that bolts.
yeah.
Yeah. 70-pound
Yeah,
dog
so I'm
that
carrying
doesn't
mine.
know
I'm
how
not
to
gonna
stay
probably
with
go
you.
anywhere, right? But if you have to
Exactly.
walk through, yeah, that is true. Didn't think of that.
But if they're a service dog, they shouldn't be bolting.
Yeah.
I
So
would hope not.
But yeah,
if
so a
they're a true
large dog,
service
yeah,
dog,
probably that size is not going to be going through the metal detector with you unless it's a service dog.
yeah.
So I imagine in case of delays or whatever, you need to bring like extra treats. You have your water dish. Do you bring like wee pads and things like that? Or
So my dogs are not potty pad trained. They don't know what to do with that. So the
okay,
first time I flew, I have friends that fly internationally long flights. If you have to fly overseas with them, you might be on the plane for 12 hours. What are you going to do? You want to give your dog a chance to go. So I have a lot of friends who fly internationally and on long flights, and their dogs are potty pad trained, and they carry their dog to the bathroom, put the potty pad on the floor, and have them. They go there. That didn't work for us. Dogs will hold it.
Yeah.
But I do line the carrier with potty pads. Like maybe I'll put a potty pad in the bottom and then a blanket over it. So if there is a
Mhm.
mess in there, it's easier to clean up just in case they can't hold it.
yeah.
I would say also you probably are just not feeding them or watering them too much if you're going through that as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah. You don't want
but normally with dogs, you feed them and they're ready to go to the bathroom in 15 minutes. So
yeah. So yeah, I
it's
don't
like
feed
pretty
them
quick.
right before we get on. The last actual meal they eat is 2 to 3 hours before. But that's usually when I get to the airport, so we have to
Yeah.
wait. I do offer them water, but I don't allow them to just guzzle it.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah.
enough so
Yeah.
that they
They stay
yes.
hydrated. Yeah. Cool. Let's move on to hotels because I had mentioned I was in Whidbey Island and the hotel we stayed at was pet
Mhm.
friendly. And you're also in Seattle, so of course the Pacific Northwest. We love our
Mhm.
dogs, and it's almost as bad as California with people trying to bring them. So, what have you noticed about hotels, especially any like specific chains or rules you have to know if you want to have a hotel with your dog?
Yeah. Most hotels. So I start my search on a website called bringfido.com. I don't know if you use that. It's like an Expedia for dog friendly hotels. So if you're going to a new area, that'll give you an idea of what's there. There are sometimes some other hotels if you do independent research, but they're pretty good about covering all of the hotels that are there. So the hotels almost always have a pet fee, and that pet fee can vary from like
Yeah.
$20 per dog per night. I've been to a couple that charge $20 per dog for the entire stay, but that's very rare. And then you have some other hotels that basically I think it's to cover cleaning, but also some hotels will charge like 100. You can bring your pet. They're like, "Sure, we're
Yeah.
dog friendly. You can bring your pet." It's $250 a night for the pet fee, which is
Yeah.
essentially a pet fee
A
so high that no
deterrent.
one's gonna pay it. And the hotel's
Yeah.
great. We didn't really want your dog here anyway. So it can really vary. There are some hotels that see, I had Red Roof and Motel 6, Kimpton, and Virgin Motels that generally the company policy is they don't charge a pet fee, but most of those are franchises and they can charge pet fees if they want. Like most of the Motel 6s I go to do charge a pet fee. And then you have a limit on the number of dogs. It's almost always 2
Mm.
maximum, and a weight limit, which is usually cumulative, not per dog. So if you're bringing 2 dogs and their limit is 150 pounds, both of your dog's combined weight has to be under 150 pounds. There are some that only allow 1 dog. There are some hotels, mostly I find like more independent small chains or boutique hotels that will allow you to have more. There's this hotel and they're not paying me. I'm not pitching them, but I stay when I go to Seaside, Oregon. The company is Adrift Hospitality, but they have an Adrift in Long Beach, Washington, and a Shore in Seaside, and they don't have a pet limit, and also their pet policies, if it can fit through the door, it can stay. They've had miniature horses and goats and things like that they
Oh
let
my
stay.
goodness.
Yeah,
Wow.
there is a pet fee, and it's not cheap. The hotel is not cheap, but
Yeah.
when I go to Seaside for a dachshund event down there, I usually to make it cheaper, I stay with a couple friends, so we've had 6, 7 dachshunds in the same room, and they're like, "This is great, this is fine." And, so
That's
you can
funny.
find some hotels like that, but mostly when I travel, especially now that I have 3, because I don't condone
Yeah, that's
lying about
another
how many dogs you have,
level.
even though my dogs all look like 2 people that don't know them. We camp. This is what we do
Mhm.
to get around it. My
Nice.
dream is to have a van life thing. But
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
hotel on wheels, but
I know one of your dreams is to go to Switzerland for a month and hike with the dogs. Have you looked into international travel and what's involved? I know I've seen that you can get a visa for your dog if you're traveling a lot internationally, but
for Europe,
um
European countries, yeah,
okay. Yeah, and
like
so what can you
EU
tell us
countries.
about international travel?
Yeah,
Yep.
I haven't traveled internationally with my dogs myself, unless you count Canada, but not overseas. But I have friends that have regularly travel overseas. One of my friends, she has a blog called Travel Nudity, and she's actually written a book. She is now mostly based in Australia, but she's traveled a lot of places around the world with her dog. And so I have a lot of people I can call if I have questions because the research and the information you find can be very confusing and conflicting
Uh,
because you often have several government entities you have to comply with. So I have traveled to Canada with my dogs. Drive there because we're in Washington. It's not far. It's my favorite mode of
right.
travel anyway. There have been so because I have friends I can ask about international travel, and I do have aspirations to go there. I was actually researching because I wanted to get a dachshund from Germany. So I was researching how I could go there and get one and bring it back. So there are some things that people need to be aware of. The United States has recently changed kind of the requirements for dogs coming in the country, even via car. This was mostly
Mhm.
standard via plane, but the important things to know is that you cannot bring a dog inside the country unless it's 6 months old. And my understanding and I could be wrong, but my understanding is that also applies to going to Canada and then getting back in. So if you just got a
Yep.
puppy and it's 8 weeks old and you go to Canada, you might not actually be able to get back into the US with it. So no traveling unless
And
it's over 6 months and you can't get it from another country and buy it in Canada and bring it into the US because it's not 6 months old. They have to have this is a new requirement from coming from Canada, but they have to have an internationally recognized microchip. It's called ISO. Most people in the United States, when they get microchips for their dog, are not internationally recognized. So before I used to
Mm.
go to Canada a lot before the pandemic, and I haven't for a while, but I want to go back. But none of my dogs have internationally recognized microchips. So I'm going to have to get them re-chipped if I want to do that with a new one that is internationally recognized. A lot of the regulations, it depends on country. It depends on the rabies status of that country. So if the country is considered certified rabies free, which Canada is and a lot of countries are, the requirements to get back in is pretty easy. You just have to fill out the CDC, what's it called? CDC import form, which you can do in line on your phone while you're waiting at the border to come in if you're driving over.
We've done that, and we haven't had an issue with the international microchip on that. We were able to just input it's microchip.
Yeah.
Have the handy, but
yes, there's a technical requirements, and then there's
exactly
the experience. And I will say, even before these new requirements, you're supposed to have a health certificate and things.
Yeah.
I've been over the border 10, 15 times, and I'm always like, I have my paperwork, I have all the things. And they're like, yeah, we don't even care. The thing with the EU, like the dog passports, is basically that stores all of that information in that passport. So then you only have to show the passport. You don't have to show the packet of information each time. I think the other thing...
Well, I know there's quarantine rules too.
That's what I was just going to mention.
Even Hawaii,
The other important thing to mention, and again, that often has to do with either the rabies status of the country you visited, or like New Zealand and Australia, very strict. Hawaii, very strict, because they're island. And so they absolutely cannot have any diseases brought in. And most quarantines, I know Australia has I believe my friend said, she's from there, I believe she said it's 30 days, but most have at least a 10-day quarantine.
Wow.
Yeah. When most of the restricted countries like that have the quarantine. So there's some really, you're going to go on a 2-week vacation and you don't want to you would only go there with your dog if you were moving there. Otherwise you would leave them home with a sitter or something, because that's just very stressful for you and the dog.
I can't even imagine. Poor baby living in a cage for that long, not knowing what's going on. Yeah. I think we've covered quite a bit. Do you have any other final tips that you want to share that people should know? And I know that you said you knew someone also, if someone's looking for information about traveling with cats, you had a recommendation. Want to share any final tips for traveling with dogs?
Yeah, you can actually Google adventure cats. So there's adventurecats.org. There are several blogs about adventuring with cats. You can find them on Instagram too.
My daughter sends me some of those videos.
Yeah, so the backpack with the little window.
Yeah, the backpack with the window.
Yeah, 10 years ago, there wasn't that information. So it's great. I know a lot of people that travel with their cats. Some hotels don't allow cats. So just because they allow a dog doesn't mean they allow a cat.
Yeah, scratching everything up.
Yeah, it's like when you're going to rent a place. It's funny. Some places allow dogs, don't allow cats. Some places allow cats, not dogs. But with hotels, if they're pet friendly, they allow dogs usually, but not always cats. So you'd want to check. And I have people travel with the litter box in the car, like a covered litter box, like if they're driving. And so the cat can go into the back of the car and use the litter box if they need to. They'll put it in the bathroom at the hotel, things like that. Yeah, but
I know.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I know I have to basically drug my cat just to get him to the vet. So
yeah.
We're definitely not doing any cross-country trips or things like that.
Like with some dogs, I think dogs are more inclined to ride in the car than cats just naturally. But if you start them young, it's usually like fine. It's usually not a problem. So if you got a cat wanting to adventure with a cat, then just start them young and they'd be used to it. And some cats, I have friends that travel in an RV with a cat and it likes to lay up on the dashboard in the sun. You've probably seen similar videos on social media and stuff. So they can be really great travel companions. And I always like when I'm hiking, it can be tricky, especially when you have a dog that's bred for hunting. You come across a cat on a trail, you have to be extra on top of the situation to make sure nothing happens. But it always makes me smile, especially because people don't expect, like my dog's dachshunds. I get so many, short little legs and you have to carry him up here. I can't believe they don't think they can hike like that, but mine have hiked 15 miles in a day. So I'm it pleases me to see someone bringing a cat and breaking stereotypes, because that's what I believe in too. So it's fun.
Nice.
I would just say, for those that can't bring their pets, one of the things that I've been doing recently for our cats is to have somebody stay at the house. If we're doing a short trip, I have a pet sitter that comes in like once or twice a day to take care of them. But recently, one of my cats was very ill. And so we really needed somebody to stay and be there to give medicine and give a little more attention. And so I started using trusted house sitters. And let's see, I've used it now. Coming up on my third time. And it's really, you have to pay a membership fee to join whether you're a sitter or whether you're a homeowner that wants to have a sitter. And then everyone has reviews, everyone's has a background check. And it's really amazing to me that I live in Rhode Island and you wouldn't necessarily, and I'm not like on the beach, so you wouldn't think that people would really be interested. But every time I put up a listing, I get a bunch of replies within a day. Or a lot of times people will have like family, like we had somebody stay for Thanksgiving and they had family in the area. The family doesn't have enough space to stay. So it was a perfect way to come visit family for Thanksgiving. So yeah, I found it to be a really good service. It's always a little bit weird to have like strangers staying.
Yeah.
But to be honest, like it saves me a ton of money because I used to pay someone to come in twice a day or I had to stay here. You actually aren't paying the house sitter. They're getting a place to stay for free. And so depending on what the setup is, like that works for them. Like I know there's someone that's like cat sitter or something like that on Instagram, and she travels the world by staying in
that's what I was
places
gonna say. I know it's a thing.
Yeah, I was gonna mention that too. I have a friend who she used to travel and dog sit or farm sit. She had horses and stuff too. It's like they would actually pay her to travel there and then give her a place to stay, and and then she would watch their animals for how long. It's interesting for me because I am actually a dachshund specific sitter here, and I watch them in my home here. But one of the questions that you sent me before this interview was, what are my travel aspirations? Switzerland to hike with my dogs. I'd love to get a van and spend a year traveling the country. But I would also be interested in helping me fund the travel, in that traveling to dachshund sit for people. Yeah. Because I have fans all over the country and they're like, oh, I wish you lived by us. Because they always see the dogs that I'm dog sitting and stuff. And I thought, well, that would be fun for traveling around and having a place to stay and that. So that is, I like that idea. I don't belong to that website, but I like that idea.
So just an option for those of us that leave our pets at home when we're off traveling. Just know that just because you have pets doesn't mean that you can't travel.
Absolutely. Yep. Thank you so much, Jessica,
thank you
for sharing with us. Do you want to tell our listeners where they can find you online?
Yeah, so my blog, I started in 2010, so it's been around, but it's youdidwhatwithyourwiener.com. And we are also very active on Facebook and Instagram, and we meaning me and the dogs. On Instagram, we do have a YouTube channel. And so Instagram, all of them are the same name, You Did What With Your Wiener. We do have a YouTube channel also that I am starting to put more content on. I don't have a lot of travel content on there right now. It's mostly dachshund specific, but I'm going to be putting more travel content up there too.
Great. We will link to all of that in our show notes. And yeah, thanks for sharing your experience and expertise with us today.
Yeah. Thank you for having me on. Bye.
Bye. If you like this episode, be sure to subscribe and rate and review on your favorite podcast app, as that helps other people discover us. And if you want to see more, follow me, Tamara, at Your Time to Fly on Instagram and Facebook and all the others.
And you can follow me, Kim, at Stuffed Suitcase on Instagram, Facebook, and of course my blog.